So Tim, I'll ask the question that most people always want to know. How do you get the subject for a book? Do you have a eureka moment? Or are there always a bunch of ideas floating around and you pluck one of them down to start?
Well, I usually work on 2 or 3 subjects at the same time. And I maybe write 2 or 3 pages, sometimes I even write 50 pages, and then I realize maybe that's not the one I want. And with this one, I had worked on notes and played around with it as a possible script. And then I had this moment when I thought, well, let me see if I can work this into a novel. And once I began it, then when I saw how well it flowed, I just went on writing it to the end.
Moving on to the research that's obviously gone into the writing of this book, had you visited Kabul before you wrote the Taliban Cricket Club, or was the book the impetus to go visit the city?
Well, the book certainly inspired me to visit Kabul. I'd written a skeleton of it, and then I went to Kabul, and I had a very good contact there who set me up with a very good driver, introduced me around to people from all walks of life, both men and women. So it was only once I had done that, then I felt the novel could become richer. But in the meantime, I'd sort of set it all out.
There are some very sort of heart-rending stories in the book. The descriptions of people and places, very emotive, very deeply felt. Was this all as a result of your time there? Was it stories that you had heard, things that you pulled out of your imagination, or a combination of all 3, perhaps?
I think it was a mixture of all of that. But I also heard stories told to me by the people I met in Kabul. The women told me 2 or 3 stories which I included in the novel. The men told me what it was like to live under the Taliban. So having gone there, I mean, of course I'd read everything possible, the history of Afghanistan, going back to, the year dot, and up to the present moment, and read all the stories about the people there. And it's only when I went there and met them that I could actually flesh out the stories and give them a face, which is what I needed to do when I went to Kabul.
Rukhsana is the heart of your novel, and she's a wonderful heroine. She's brave, courageous, spunky, very memorable. How did she come into being? Is she someone you met, saw, or again, a work of fiction?
Well, I was in Kabul airport in the very dull area, which is immigration customs, and I was looking across, and there was this really lovely woman. She wasn't beautiful, but she was so exuberant. She was in her mid-20s, and she was talking to her friends, and her hair wasn't covered, she was stylishly dressed, and a sea of hair kept falling down here, and she kept pushing it back and come back. And my character, Rukhsana, has that sea of hair that keeps falling down on her face, across her forehead. So that was a kind of model I chose. And just watching her, as I say, it was a 10-minute period I was looking at her. And then she went off, and I thought, that's someone I can build a base on. And from there, I already had a Rukhsana in mind, and just wanted to give her a more physical shape, which this woman in the airport gave me.
Despite the darkness of the subject matter, what is at the heart of your story is a luminous love story. Why did you pick that? Why did you feel that a love story would best illumine the motivations and desires of your characters?
Well, under the Taliban, I mean, women had absolutely no choice in their lives, certainly not in love. And their lives are so suppressed that I wanted to write about a woman who was fighting it and trying to escape it. And the best weapon against tyrants is love or courage. And my character has both. And I found that the love story gave it another dimension, because there's also the element where one of the Taliban has fallen in love with her. So there's this conflict that happens, but the one who finally wins her is the young Indian boy that she fell in love with.
While you're writing the book, do you have a working method, a routine that you follow?
Well, my whole habit has been be at my desk from 7:30 to 1. I'm not saying I sit there from 7:30 to 1 hammering away on my computer. I mean, I do wander off, I do go and have a cigarette, I go and play with my puppy dogs, and I have to listen to Maureen tell me things. So in between I'm working, but at the same time I try and keep that routine from 7:30 to 1.
The title of the book, The Taliban Cricket Club, is a glorious title. At what stage of the writing, rewriting, editing did the title come to you?
Well, I think it actually came first. When the Taliban announced cricket back in 2000, they were going to introduce cricket to Afghanistan. And it sort of went through my mind, Taliban, cricket. And I think the first thing that came into my mind was the Taliban Cricket Club. And that sort of became the foundation for the novel. The idea, the whole reason I was going to write it was about this team called the Taliban Cricket Club. And it's set in Kabul and everything. So it sort of, the title came right from the word get-go.
The way you talked about cricket in the book is a clear indication of how much you know, love and understand the game. So could you tell us a little bit more about that? Your favorite players perhaps, something about your love for the game?
Well, I was brought up playing cricket. I played cricket all my life, some of it in England. And I've always enjoyed watching cricket as well, but playing it above all. And I have many favorite cricketers. I mean, the Tendulkars and the Dravids, and my favorite, I think, of all is Gary Sobers, a West Indian cricketer who moved like a panther on the field, and who I watched him play so many times. But there's this huge range of cricketers and other sportsmen I admire.
Thank you very much, Tim. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, Parvati.